Welcome back. Now, Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga has assured the education sector of the department's plan for the reopening of schools and that they have made provision for the needs of learners with disabilities. Now, according to Human Rights Watch, almost 120,000 learners are enrolled in special needs schools. And it says that in 2017, close to 11,500 children with special needs were still waiting to be enrolled. So to discuss this matter further, we are joined now by Robyn Beere, who's a Deputy Director of Equal Education Law Centre. Thanks so much for your time this morning, Robyn.
Pleasure. Good morning.
So you've met with the department recently on the state of readiness for special needs schools. What came out of those engagements?
So we've been very encouraged by the Inclusive Education Directorate's willingness to engage with civil society. We have been a little bit concerned that despite reaching out to the Minister and the DG, we haven't yet received any feedback on our letters and requests for information. But the Inclusive Education Directorate itself, they did reach out and ask for assistance from civil society in helping them to draw up protocols that will be needed, particularly for PPE, for learners in particular, with particular disabilities in different special schools. Obviously, at the moment, all special schools are just being given the same PPE pack, hygiene pack as all the other schools, which is completely inadequate. So I think they do acknowledge that they do need to be adapting this depending on the specific disabilities of learners involved.
So with the reality of learners returning to school, at least for grades 12 and 7 on the 1st of June, is this now a case, especially with regard to learners with special needs, that the department have made provisions already, or is it a case of they will still make the provisions to make sure that the environment is conducive for learners with special needs or disabilities to return?
It certainly seems as though they are still trying to make those provisions. It definitely doesn't sound like special schools are ready yet. I think one of our biggest concerns is the fact that many of our special schools are residential, i.e. they have hostels attached to them. And even prior to the lockdown, there was grave concern about the conditions of those hostels from an infrastructure and safety point of view, as well as from a shortage of staff. There have been many exposés about the really deplorable conditions in many of these hostels. So the concern now is if learners with disabilities for whom their only or nearest special school is kilometres away and they have to go back into a hostel condition, will these hostels be able to provide for their unique support needs and the added needs now of ensuring their safety against infection from COVID? So, and until we get really firm reassurances that that is on track, I think that will remain a concern for parents and for civil society.
Now, Robyn, you mentioned that there seems to be this generic pack of personal protective equipment that is provided for all learners, regardless of the fact that they may have special needs. So what kinds of support is needed for some of the learners with disabilities for them to be able to go back to school safely?
It varies completely depending on the disability, the nature and extent of a disability. For example, learners who typically go to special care centres, these are learners who have severe to profound intellectual disability, often also have quite a high level of associated medical needs. For those learners, there has to be a very detailed and very intensive plan in place. Many of learners with physical disabilities require daily physiotherapy. Obviously, any kinds of therapy like physiotherapy or occupational therapy involves physical touch, and so obviously very specific PPE for both the therapist as well as for the learner needs to be provided before those therapies can resume. And even just things, learners with autism, for example, have sensory integration issues. So often for them, wearing a mask is just intolerable. Or for learners who are deaf and lip read, obviously a mask that's entirely covering their face is not suitable. So all of these measures need to be put in place. All of these different protocols need to be adapted for the different disabilities and for schools that cater for learners with these disabilities before they'll be able to return to school.
So, as you've outlined, clearly a very different challenge for parents and caregivers of learners with disabilities, especially being at home for this long, Robyn. How would they, at this stage, still go about stimulating these children?
This has been a huge challenge and a big concern for us. As you say, many of these learners rely daily on these types of therapies in order to continue to improve their mobility and their flexibility. And we've had reports of parents now who have to return to work and obviously cannot leave a child with that level of support need at home unattended. So, it really has been difficult for parents to try and support their learners without any of the access to these facilities during this lockdown period. We have had, obviously, individual organizations of persons with disabilities have reached out to their constituents and have tried to provide some of the support. And in some of the provinces, special schools and therapists have tried to sort of video therapy clips to parents that they're able to continue with us at home. But obviously it isn't to the same extent and intensity that they would be receiving at their schools. So it really has been a challenge for parents sitting now sort of almost 2 months into this, not having sort of very detailed programs or access to support or therapists that are able to come to them in order to continue with this important therapy.
So as we speak right now, with schools set to reopen for grades 12 and grade 7, at least of the schools that you may have been able to get in touch with and assess the situation, Robyn, are they ready, those schools that are catering to children with disabilities and special needs?
So we had a follow-up call with the Inclusive Education Directorate yesterday. 2 of the provinces were on that call. And, what is apparent is there's varying states of readiness. As things stand, I don't think any schools have received any appropriate PPE. We did hear the minister talk last night saying that this is also intentional, that PPE will be phased into schools as they open. But it does seem clear to us that specialized PPE has not even been ordered or procured yet for special schools. They are meant to be opening later than ordinary schools, other than the schools that follow the ordinary curriculum, which correctly, yes, grade 12 and grade 7 are due to go back on the 1st. But it really is clear from us that special schools aren't ready yet. And the question will remain, how quickly can they procure specialized PPE and make sure that infrastructure, support staff, therapists, teachers are all in place, that they're able to receive children in a matter of 10 days.
Oh, thank you so much. Robyn Beere, Deputy Director of Equal Education Law Centre, talking to us about learners with disabilities amid the COVID-19 outbreak and, of course, the preparedness of schools to accept these children, as we have heard from the Minister last night that schooling will resume on the 1st of June. All right, it's time now for our 8 o'clock.